Well, hello YouTube, it's me, Fortmaster, and welcome back to another Super Eye Patch Wolf reaction. This is another one on the list of, videos that looked cool from their thumbnail, and I wanted to look at. Riverdale, the show that went completely insane. If you don't know about Riverdale, because I only knew it in passing, I knew about it. I never watched it because I had better things to do with my life. But yeah, it was a live action adaptation, or I guess a live action version, not really an adaptation, of, the Archie comics. That one brand of comic book that you can still buy at the checkout of a grocery store. Man, I remember the first time I discovered Archie, and it wasn't even by the comic books. I remember watching this old cartoon. It was like, was Archie's Weird Mysteries? Is that what it was called? Give me a second, I gotta double check this. Yeah, that was it, Archie's Weird Mysteries. That was the first time I'd ever consciously noticed Archie, because I remember watching a few episodes. It was a really weird show. But then I remember shortly afterwards, I noticed for the first time the comic book in the store, and I was so confused, because when I looked through, it's like, man, this is nothing like the show at all. It's not until later that I realized that the show was based off the comic book, so yeah, I was an idiot when I was little. Arguably still am. But anyway, back to the show at hand. Yeah, don't know that much about the show. I remember there being a little bit of a kerfuffle because they made Jughead, one of the characters in the show, have a crush on another character, and that was an issue because people had always thought that Jughead was like asexual because his whole thing was just food. Like he had never looked at another human being ever in that sort of light. So I have no idea if he's saying the show went completely insane. I am very curious, and I definitely want to see where this is going to go. So yeah, with all that out of the way, original video is linked in the description if you haven't seen it for some reason. Corner tab will be linking to my newest Let's Play video. And yeah, with all that out of the way, let's get this thing started then, shall we?
Here's a few out-of-context moments from Riverdale. One attendee of Riverdale High is discovered to be a grown woman pretending to be a high school student. There is a group of homoerotic superheroes. A 17-year-old competes in a bare-knuckle boxing match with an evil billionaire to take control of the town. There is a magic word that wipes people's memories and puts them into a violent murder trance. There is a cult of evil subterranean nuns known as the Sisters of Quiet Mercy. A character spends the night playing Dungeons & Dragons with ghosts before beating himself to death with a baseball bat. A girl is haunted by
Himself
an
to
evil
death?
doll. The town of Riverdale is invaded by zombies. There are 9 serial killers across 4 seasons, one of whom is an 11-foot tall monster known as the Gargoyle King. This happens.
Mr. Chipping?
I'm sorry, Jughead, that I couldn't help you.
Mr. Chipping!
This also happens. Many other things happen.
What?
I would like to talk about them. See, I've developed...
Okay, so I was talking about Archie's Weird Mysteries being weird. Yeah, but that was more, animated sort of like paranormal sort of things. Like they had one with I think it was potatoes that were mutant potatoes that were taking over people's minds. They'd had one that was like a parody of the 50-foot woman. I forget whether it was Betty or Veronica. But this is going more into the direction of Fringe. Oh.
A unhealthy obsession with this show. I am fascinated by it. Fascinated as to how a show that started as a very normal teen drama could morph into one of the most bizarre and ridiculed shows on television.
Well, I mean, that kind of happens with every show, isn't it? If it goes on long enough, they basically have to start scraping the bottom of the barrel for ideas, and it seems that the barrel they were scraping for this was full of crack. Actually, did he say over 4 seasons? No, 7 seasons. Okay, but over the course of 4 seasons, there were 9 serial killers. Okay, so Yeah, the barrel was full of crack. That was it. Yeah, I'm just gonna stick with that.
To ask, is there value in that? Oh god, I think there might be. To properly chart this full descent into madness, I want to take a second and look at the original comic series that began in 1941.
1941, has it? Wait a second, is the Archie comic still being published? I didn't even think of that. Last time I've gone to the grocery store, I didn't even look to see if it was still on the side there. Give me a second. Oh my god, Archie Comics is still, like, actual Archie Comics, not the company that makes them, Archie Comics, is still a thing. They still print new ones, and they've updated their art style quite a bit. Wow, okay.
And full disclosure, as a bog child who grew up in Ireland, my experience with the Archie comic goes exactly as far as that one joke from The Simpsons. But looking back on it now, it's easy to imagine how the pastel world of diners and milkshakes would have been the simple escapism America needed post-World War II. Escapism that's centered around Archie, your lovesick teenage everyman ensnared in a love triangle between Betty, the safe but fun, wholesome girl next door, and Veronica, the fiery high society daughter of a millionaire. So I guess kinda like Oscar and Ray if you grew up in the 60s. These are the correct choices and I'm closing comments. As well as Jughead, the aloof, burger-hungry best friend who balanced out the romance-obsessed cast by having zero interest in it. Stories were simple, the art was charming, but what's interesting looking back now is how guarded that style was. Despite being worked on by dozens of different artists and writers over the decades, the series never really changed. The license holders being so protective, they even shut down a gay Archie stage play as they were worried it would harm the integrity of the characters. Wow, I hope that decision doesn't become retroactively humiliating. However, this alone change meant that by the early 2000s, Archie, this series that had once regularly outsold Batman and Superman, had shrunk to just 0.5% of the market, leading to a wave of titles that broke the traditional style and tone of Archie, like the ironically named Life with Archie, where Archie dies. But it was actually a variant cover of this comic that would change the fate of the series forever, one depicting Archie facing zombified versions of Betty, Veronica, and Jughead, which led to another spin-off, After Life with Archie, which I refuse to explain the premise of because you can see it right here. And After Life with Archie
in the zombie apocalypse,
awesome. A really cool piece of horror while simultaneously being this really interesting take on an alternate Riverdale. And it was a smash hit, selling 40,000 copies and propelling its writer, Roberto Aguirre Sacasa, to the chief creative officer of Archie Comics. Sacasa being the writer of that gay Archie stage play that had been shut down. Oh dear, as well as the person who would go on to pitch and become the lead creative on Riverdale. Sacasa is an interesting fellow, but if I could find one quote to sum him up creatively, and what honestly made a lot of Riverdale make a lot more sense, it would be this 2003 interview where he talks about how one of his assignments in drama school was to write a 1-hour play using just a single set and no more than 4 characters. The play I wrote was over 2 hours long, had 7 actors, 2 of whom were kids, 3 sets, and a giant squid. This is the mindset that Riverdale came from, and worth noting as we descend into madness. But things don't start off that way. The first season of Riverdale feels like a very average teen drama tinged with a trace of Twin Peaks. The story beginning when Jason Blossom, heir to the Blossom family fortune, is discovered drowned in a boating accident alongside his twin sister Cheryl, who has survived. His death rippling through the town and unearthing a stockpile of unsavory secrets. And then Jason's dead body is never used in another plotline ever again.
Okay, I'm gonna... Eye Patch Wolf, I'm going to really hope you have a counting gag where you just have a number counting up in the corner every time that body comes up in a plot, okay?
Before we dive into Riverdale Season 1, I do want to acknowledge that the internet and society tend to be very cruel to, well, anything teenage girls get excited about, and as tempting as it is to join the lucrative subgenre of men in their 30s getting angry about children's media, that is really not my goal here.
I've been an avid consumer of that content for years. Granted, I will defend the whole thing of, you know, girls getting to, you know, like the things they like as well. but only if that stuff is good. I mean, I think we can all agree Twilight sucks.
And there are positive things about season 1 of Riverdale. Like, the casting is generally pretty great. Lily Reinhardt imbues Betty with a sweetness and charisma that really captures the charm of that character. Madeline Pesh as Cheryl has this cruel, sarcastic edge that unironically makes her so much fun. And KJ Apa, playing Archie, who spends half the show getting the piss kicked out of him, performs the character with the innocent sympathy of a small dog who cannot get his PlayStation working on Christmas morning. He also looks very good with his shirt off, and the show is very, very aware of this. In fact, the entire cast of Riverdale, including the parents, all have this level of unearthly super beauty I could only liken to some impossible, sacred, dear god. So it is a nice show to look at. And unfortunately, that is where my praises end. If we break down season 1 into its two core aspects, it would be the murder mystery plot and the high school drama that plays out between the characters. And it's that second part that makes up the vast, vast majority of season 1. The problem being that it's just not very good. When not borrowing plotlines from other better teen dramas, your OCs, your Gossip Girls, your Dawson's Creeks, yes, I have watched all of these, no, I will not offer any explanation. The only thing that Riverdale really has to set itself apart is its attempt to tackle modern teenage social issues, which it does do very badly. Riverdale season 1 has this habit of dragging up social issues but then discussing them with all the languid reluctance of my partner whenever I suggest she give Dragon Ball Z another go. Case in point, the episode on slut shaming. It starts when Veronica hooks up with a football player, Chuck, only for her to be slut shamed on social media the following morning, Chuck claiming he gave Veronica a sticky maple, and it's like, okay, cool, slut shaming's a real problem and a topic that shows like this should talk about. However, we soon learn that Veronica never actually slept with Chuck, and he's been lying, as he has with every other girl he's harassed in the same way. Now, I am not a lady, so I might be out of my depth here, but in a story about how women shouldn't be shamed for having healthy sex lives, is it not perhaps an important part of that story that the women in question do have healthy sex lives? Because if they don't, then the focus now shifts from women are being slut-shamed and that is a societal problem to this one football player is a liar and that's... well, that's very bold, and even carrying this kind of shitty implication that if these girls had actually slept with Chuck, they would be more deserving of the online harassments. It's frustrating because the show did have a chance to say something cool and interesting here. It just didn't, and that is a constant across season 1, but particularly in how they handled Jughead. See, a staple of Jughead's character across nearly all Archie comics is that he has zero interest in romance, because if he does,
this is what I was talking about.
The love triangle of Betty, Veronica, and Archie. And this has led a lot of fans to speculate that Jughead is asexual. This aspect of the character was actually canonized in 2016, but in Riverdale, it's disappointing for two reasons. One, I'm sure asexual folks would have appreciated the representation. There are very few asexual characters on television, and one of them is SpongeBob SquarePants. And two, I think creatively, this would have been a much more interesting direction for the character. Like, take Todd from BoJack Horseman. Part of what makes this character feel like such a sweet little angel man was watching him figure out himself and the difference between sexual and romantic love. And it made for these super endearing plot lines that felt fresh and original because you hadn't seen them 100 times before. And the creators are aware of this. Cole Sprouse, who plays Jughead, has been an advocate for this direction for the character, and even in early interviews, Sakasa and the writers have stated that they planned on exploring this aspect of Jughead, but we are now 5 seasons in, and my point here is not that the show is bad for not portraying Jughead as asexual, just that this is part of a larger trend of insincere writing where the show wants to come across as socially conscious, but does it insincerely or ineptly.
That's I'm not going to get too far into it, but this is the kind of thing that really grinds my gears. I have absolutely no problem with, creating like it's gay or bisexual characters or, all that sort of stuff. I mean, people exist like that in real life. Give them like a character they can look to and see a bit of themselves in. But it's stuff like this, and it applies going both ways for me, because it annoys me when it happens either way. But when they rewrite a character like that, and sexuality is very much a core part of everybody's identity, whether it's who you're attracted to or if you don't have it. That's also a very important distinction. But when you just change something like that, you're changing the character irreparably. Just pretend I said that word correctly, okay? So yeah, for anybody writing this, just don't change people's sexualities in fiction or stuff like that. It's annoying. If you want to do it, write something new and make sure it's good.
And it does so with even the most basic of social issues. Like, take this scene in Veronica's home where Ethel confesses that her dad has been fired, her family is broke, and she's struggling with mental health. And Veronica says,
"Girl, we have a lot more in common than I thought. We lost our place at the Dakota. Being ruined sucks."
And it's just... How are you ruined, Veronica? Look around you, sitting in your Chanel outfit, nibbling your quiche Lorraine off your bone china in your literal mansion.
Oh god, I could go for a quiche right now.
Arguably, the bigger issue is that when Riverdale is not grossly misunderstanding poverty, it is just every other high school show you have ever seen. Most of the locations take place in your typical hallways, classrooms, locker rooms, and walks to school, and all have the same personalityless, muted, dull look to them. The stories that play out within them, not really much more exciting. Betty's mom is mean, Jughead's dad drinks too much, and little Archie Andrews gets stage fright while playing his guitar. It never feels like we're learning anything about these characters through the scenarios they're placed in or the actions they take in those scenarios, but instead, we just get these weird, awkward spiels as they just monologue about their own identity in a way that's, well,
In case you haven't noticed, I'm weird. I'm a weirdo. I don't fit in, and I don't want to fit in. Have you ever seen me without this stupid hat on? That's weird.
Yeah. And while there is fun in the murder mystery plot, and there are occasional flashes of strangeness, like Betty putting on a wig and becoming Dark Betty, or Cheryl's weird vampire coven of a family, outside of these fleeting instances, it's just a bog standard high school drama of such crushing mediocrity that, God help me, I'm about to use a graph to explain it. Here is something that I, well,
oh no, not a graph,
kind of made up really, that I like to call the mediocre valley. On the x-axis, we measure from low quality to high quality, and on the y-axis, we measure from unenjoyable to highly enjoyable. And if I were to chart my taste in media, it would follow this curve right here. At the highest end of both quality and enjoyment, we would have something legitimately great like Cowboy Bebop. But on the opposite end, we would have something like the infamously terrible film, The Room. However, despite the ocean of difference in the two's quality, both rate as highly enjoyable. Bebop because it's a fucking masterpiece, and The Room because through its sheer awfulness, it becomes this bizarre and fascinating portrait of the person who created it. It might not be traditionally great art, but goddamn is it entertaining. But then there's this section in the middle right here, and this is the dreaded mediocre valley, and it's here where I would place season 1 of Riverdale, a series that simultaneously has nothing to say while never being brave enough to be terrible. And this carries through the entirety of season 1 up until its very final scene. And it's here where things start to get a little unusual. With all the plot threads tied up, we close
Okay.
out season 1 with a scene of Archie joining his
Where does this
dad
go?
for a milkshake at Pop's diner. He enters the bathroom and gives himself this smile like, hey, everything's gonna be all right. Oh, Archie, you haven't even been mauled by a bear yet. When suddenly he hears shouting coming from outside and emerges to find a gunman menacing Pop Tate before turning his gun on Archie's dad, who is shot trying to protect Archie, the gunman fleeing the scene, bringing season 1 of Riverdale to a shocking close. And I have a theory about this scene, and that is, I don't think the writers had any idea what they were doing when they wrote this scene. I don't think they knew who the shooter was or where this storyline was going. I think this was just written as a big, shocking moment. That might not sound like a big
How to get
deal,
ratings
but
up to get
whatever
a season
I say
2
with
going.
The rest of season 1, it does feel like a planned story with an inciting incident that triggers each character's arcs, all of which wrap up logically by the final episode. And if I'm right, then this scene is the moment that stopped happening, when the show goes from a coherent narrative to something else. And so I'm gonna let you be the judge, which is why you'll forgive me for presenting my case as to why I believe the writers did not know where this story was going in excruciating detail. Okay, I want to start by asking a very simple question. What happens in this scene, and specifically, what is the motive of the gunman? And there are 3 pieces of evidence to tell us this. The first being the gunman initially targeting only Pops, presumably because his objective is to get money from the till, only turning on Fred when he tries to intervene. And supporting this is our second piece of evidence. Though it's muffled, we can hear the gunman scream at Fred to give me your wallet. Our third piece of evidence coming after Fred is shot, when we can plainly see loose dollar bills littering the floor, presumably which the shooter took from Pop's till. And so the conclusion I think most reasonable people will come to is that the gunman's motive was to steal money, which led to a botched robbery, resulting in Fred Andrews being shot by accident. Now, what if I told you that is not what happened? Season 2 begins, and the entire scene is no longer a botched robbery, but instead the introduction of the green-eyed serial killer, the Black Hood, a maniac hell-bent on cleansing Riverdale of sinners who targeted Fred Andrews because of an extramarital affair he was having with Veronica's mom. And this change raises 3 big inconsistencies with how the scene was originally shot. 1, if Fred Andrews was the gunman's target, then why did he attack Pops first? Fred is plainly visible from the entrance. And 2, if this was not a robbery and his motive was to kill Fred and not steal money, then why ask for Fred's wallet, especially before shooting him if that was the original intention? And 3, if this really wasn't a botched robbery, then where did the loose bills littering the ground come from? It's through these 3 inconsistencies we can see how both the motives of the gunman and the actual events of the scene itself were changed in between seasons. Meaning... Objection! Okay, shit. While writing this, I actually found some evidence that maybe I'm wrong here. The Black Hood
what's going on?
is an old MLJ comic book superhero, and the show does like to reference classic MLJ characters a lot, so the gunman wearing a black hood could indicate that they really did have bigger plans for this scene. And there is a line in the narration that indicates this wasn't just a random robbery.
Marked by an act of violence. It was anything but random.
Granted, that could have just been added in post-production after this was shot, but the inconsistency with the wallet, well, season 2 actually addresses this directly by speculating that the Black Hood took Fred's wallet so he could learn where Fred lives and attack Archie and his dad at a later date, which does kind of make sense. Man,
Oh.
why would I set up my own argument only to debunk it?
Oh no, what do you...
Or so I would say if the second season's attempt to cover up the inconsistency with the wallet didn't lead to a far bigger inconsistency. See, when we eventually find out the identity of the Black Hood, he's revealed to be Hal Cooper, Betty's father, who also had an extramarital affair. But you know, it's fine, it doesn't matter. Who wouldn't need Fred Andrews' wallet to know where he lives because the two are next door neighbors. But my real silver bullet piece of evidence in my case as to why the writers really had no idea who the Black Hood was, even well into season 2, comes in that little innocuous detail they gave us about the Black Hood's green eyes. Because if we look at this scene from season 2, episode 10,
doesn't have green eyes.
We can very clearly see that Hal has blue eyes. But then fast forward to season 2, episode 20, and his eye color has now changed to a vibrant green, because it's only now he's being written as the Black Hood, meaning the writers really would have had no idea who this character was or where this story was going when they first wrote it. Your Honor, I rest my case. The reason I'm going into such detail
no.
I shouted too much in the previous section and I think I've lost my voice. Hang on, I'm gonna drink some water. The reason I'm going into such detail about this is that understanding how this scene was wrote changes the intended purpose behind it. It wasn't written as the beginning of a planned narrative, but as this big instance of shock and awe designed to draw in as much attention as possible. And here's the thing,
ratings.
It worked. Riverdale saw a huge spike in viewership from season 1 to season 2, and while there could be multiple factors at play here, I'd bet that the shock of the shooting scene at the end of season 1 was a big factor in it. And so, after languishing for a season as a sub-average teen drama, the entire direction of Riverdale begins to change. The second season of Riverdale begins and immediately something is different. Even the look of the show feels more surreal and intense. Like, here's a nighttime scene of Pop's Diner from season 1, and here is that same location in season 2. And look at how much more awash the characters are in glowing neon. And a lot of the scenes have this same extreme treatment. Some are lit with the somber intensity of a French neo-noir, others the stabbing neon palette of an 80s slasher movie. And adding to that surreal feel is the set design. The internet and phones exist in Riverdale, but only when they're relevant to the plot. But a lot of the technology is from a period much older than that. You have these old-timey automobiles, corded telephones, and retro analog televisions. And it all comes together to give the town of Riverdale this surreal feel like it's a place that exists outside time and space. And this is just the beginning of the bizarreness. Some characters are completely recast with more extreme personas. Reggie was basically your nice jock boy in season 1, but the new Reggie in season 2 is immediately like, "You kids wanna buy some drugs?" And as for the main cast, begin to barely resemble those of a high school show. Jughead becomes the leader of a biker gang and at one point cuts off a woman's tattoo with a pocket knife. Archie joins the mafia, buys a gun, and this happens.
Who made a mistake?
What the hell?
Who made a mistake?
Okay, I added in the sound effects myself.
Oh god,
it's still pretty wild.
I would if the gunshots just kept coming and it's got faster and faster as they went along. But Jughead becomes leader of a biker gang, joins mafia. What? I have a feeling that this entire thing is just going to be me saying what?
Veronica's dad.
And that is it for this part. If you want to continue watching this reaction, the link to the second part is on screen now. If you want to see the full uncut version of this reaction, you can find the link to that on my Patreon. I hope you guys liked. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you have not, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.